From the pursuits of an international pop star lifestyle to the pursuit of a spiritual relationship with God. Hello, I'm Gail Scott-Key, and thank you for joining Gail Scott-Key's Entertainment Now, along with my co-hosts, the beautiful Kristina Millsaps and Ritchie Munguia. This half hour, we are speaking with Christian Ray Flores, whose musical career was launched when he lived in Russia. And in the mid-90s, Christian released his first single, which made him an instant star. With chart-topping hits, Ray was living the dream. Christian now resides in Texas with his wife and kids, and I welcome to the show, the first time, Christian Ray Flores. Christian, thank you so much for joining us, and how did you like that intro?
Wow, that was overwhelming.
You weren't expecting that, huh?
I was not. That was nice. Thank you.
And now the host of Entertainment Now, Gail Scott-Key.
So, Christian Ray, it is such a pleasure to have you on the show. And as for a lot of the listeners who may not be familiar and those who are, can you give us a little bit of the background of where this all started for you? I understand in the 90s you had a big hit over in Russia. They didn't know about R&B until you actually introduced them. Your one hit.
That's true. That is very true. Yeah. You know, I grew up all over the world. I think my background was a traumatic one originally, but it became a huge asset because I grew up as a refugee. I was a refugee at age 5. My dad was in a concentration camp. We traveled a lot, 3 different continents, 4 languages by age 9. And you sort of absorb a lot of this cultural context, rhythms, music, language, culture, nuance. And then when I ended up going back to Russia when I was a teenager with my mom after my parents' divorce, which is another trauma, I sort of had this combination that was very unique. And when the Soviet Union fell apart, it was basically the timing of it was crazy because I graduated from university with a master's degree in economics in 1991, which was the year the Soviet Union fell apart. And of course, imagine if you study economics, you study Karl Marx, and then you see the whole thing crumble. And I started my career in 93. So a couple of years later, I worked a little bit as I did international trade, that kind of stuff. And I was bored to death. And I just wanted to try music. And it just happened that this demand for Western sounded music was peaking, right? It was just happening, and it was this flood of information because of the fall of the Iron Curtain, and I just happened to have this, advantage. I grew up listening to jazz and funk and R&B, and that was sort of my jam. Like, right, that was the stuff that I listened to, and most Russians didn't listen to any of that stuff, right? So I started making the music that I loved, essentially. So I was
favorite artist.
Yeah.
Who was your favorite artist that you were?
It was Michael Jackson. It was Prince. It was Lionel Ritchie. It was Ray Charles. It was Sade. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Bobby Brown, CNC Music Factory, all of that stuff, right? So I just loved all of that music. I listened to Blackstreet and all of those people, basically, right? Actually, the funny thing is my biggest hit eventually, because I had several big hits in the beginning, but my highest top hit was a New Jack Swing tune.
Oh.
And no one knew, and I was such a geek that I knew what New Jack Swing was, and we created a New Jack Swing beat, like a Teddy Riley style thing. And adopted it slightly, but it's New Jack Swing. And no one, to this day, I don't think anyone in Russia knows what New Jack Swing is. Every once in a while, I've like some of my stuff is still on YouTube. I literally, I think I had like a couple of comments like years later was like, hey, this is New Jack Swing, isn't it? In 1995 in Russia. That's crazy. But it was, yeah.
Your producer was actually trying to help you from the start, from if I understood, about how to adapt this music and how to get it going. And it seemed like what was the difference between his version of understanding and your version of perceiving that music to make it where you had the 10 hits?
That's a very good question. He was my first music producer. He was fantastic, and he is just a brilliant guy. Love him to death. We like rented an apartment together, and we had nothing. All we had was a keyboard, right? And writing songs on this keyboard. And I would just put in like a CD of Bobby Brown, and I would say, check out the beat, and humping around, and look at how he does this, and he would try to imitate it, right? So that's how it was. It was very, very, I don't know, it was just basic, but it was just two guys trying to make music, right?
And that's a wonderful thing, because I know with Ritchie, you were on a segment for him for influencers, and I watched that video. And Ritchie just does such a fantastic job, hence him being one of my co-hosts here with the lovely Kristina. That is just an extraordinary way of seeing all the versatility of what you do in the music industry, because we do have a lot of young kids who are trying to now, as you know, they can just get on YouTube, put a mic in front of them. It's not the same as what you did in the day, right?
Oh, no, it was so hard. I mean, you couldn't record at home anything of significance. Like the only way for you to make a record is to go into a studio that costs like $1 gazillion, might as well, right? Because you don't have any of that, and you don't have even $1,000. But it was one of those. I mean, the mixing board was $500,000, right? Yeah. It was one of those things, right? So that's a disadvantage compared. I mean, I wish I had even this mic. I wish I had this mic when I was doing this thing. I didn't have home recording abilities, technology or anything like that, right? On the upside though, if you made it onto a TV channel or the radio, you're an instant celebrity. Wow. So that's the upside of that, right? Because it was all, there was X amount of channels, X amount of popular radio stations.
No reality shows.
No reality shows. If they play, I still remember the big deal when I was first on TV. I was just in awe, right? Because it meant millions of people. I knew millions of people were watching my music. Or the first time they played me on the radio, and then it started playing in heavy rotation, like every X amount, right? And that's it. It's done. Right. Yeah. And you don't have that anymore.
Yeah. No. It's such an honor to have now for a second time. I have a guy that's he's an influencer that I've been following for a long time, and we're friends. But it's funny because when I interviewed you last time, I said this to you, off the grid there. I was interviewing you, and you were saying that one of the bands you performed was the CNC Music Factory. Lo and behold, Gail Scott-Key gets Martha Wash in an interview, and I didn't even know that she was the voice. I hadn't watched the whole thing, but she was the voice behind everybody dancing out and everything else. And we actually played a little clip of that, in the edited version of your interview.
Right.
I'm really curious, like the big break. We all know about the big break. How did that actually happen? I didn't really cover it quite the same way in my interview, and I'm curious where you.
The big break was like this. I was very, very intense in my dedication to the craft, right? So we would write a song, and then we would just save money, and then dump it all into a studio time, and then release, have one track. And then, but with time we had 5, right? And I had these dancers, and I had a guy who was a rapper with me, and then we started performing in local clubs in Moscow. And it was, and the thing is, because of the timing of it, there were just a few, right? There were not many, because it was all it's like the Wild West, right? Everything starts popping up everywhere. So all of the elites would hang out in 3-4 clubs around town. That was it. And there were maybe a little bit more, but the nice ones were 3 or 4. That's it. So all of the elites, all of the decision makers, industry people, burgeoning labels, all of the Western labels were rushing in, right? They were hanging out in these 4 spots. So what if I got in because like I auditioned for one club and they had me work there for 6 months straight, right? Because it was just beyond, like we were so much above it and anything else at the time that they just loved us. And then because it was such a hyper-focused sort of place, I got, record labels offering, they were in the bidding war by the end of the year.
Wow.
There are like 3 labels fighting to sign us. And one of them basically said, and I had some TV appearances already by then and stuff like that. So I was a well-known in the capital, and then with the elite, the creative class, and I was on TV here and there. And then one of them basically, to sweeten the deal, they I don't remember what the name of the label. It was a Western label. It was an American label. They basically said, "Hey, we'll put you on the New Year's show if you give us your consideration." And basically, at the time, it was like the Dick Clark show type thing, right? But imagine if that was the only thing that the whole population of 15 countries watched. Because it was all of the former Soviet Union, it was that one cultural landscape, right? 15 countries, including Ukraine, by the way, right? Yeah. So the tradition was, the big day was not Christmas, it was New Year's. And the tradition on New Year's in that whole territory was to watch this one show. And they got me on the show. And I did a duet with this girl, Kristina. I was Christian. She was Kristina. It was a very romantic R&B ballad that we did together. It's on YouTube. And they put me on the show. And I literally woke up on January 1st, went outside to like a grocery store to get a bite, to get something to eat, and people were pointing at me. And so it's basically quite literally an overnight fame, right?
Wow.
Overnight. It was one day. That's it.
Wow.
I woke up famous, basically. Yeah.
How did you get approached for the, I mean, I don't want to steal anybody's thunder, but we all know, I know your story. It's all over the internet. I mean, you got a Wikipedia page, you got everything. How did this happen where this opportunity, just landed on your lap with the whole presidency thing and all that stuff?
Oh, that was easy because I had several hits by the time. So this was, when I was the story I just told you was 93. So by 95, I had like 3 or 4 hits on the radio and television. I was a well-known sort of artist, one of the top young guns, right? I was, playing big venues by then. And then we wrote this song called Our Generation, which just happened to be this super anthemy, and it was New Jack Swing. It had a killer rap, and it was just super, had teeth basically. Mm-hmm. It was sort of a song of protest of the youth against the old generation, that kind of thing. A bit basic in my mind. You have to dumb it down to make it a hit, right? Mm-hmm. And I have a master's degree in economics. So I would struggle internally, going, okay, dumb it down, and but it worked, right? So we made it so it was half inspiration, half engineering, hit making,
strategy.
Yeah, and it just exploded. That song specifically exploded, and it was everywhere, every disco, every channel, every radio station, everything. It was insane. It was insane. This is the song that, I remember I had one experience. I didn't have that many of them, but I had one experience where it was like a big show on a city square, and we came out, and the first beats of the song, the crowd rushes the stage and they had to evacuate us. It was
my God.
Yeah, they had to literally rush us. Security had to rush us from the stage into a van, and the van was trying to make it out because it was dangerous, and people started rocking the van, right? I was genuinely scared, right? but that's where, I mean, that song got us there, right, into a place like that. So when Boris Yeltsin was trying to get elected, he was trying to get reelected, actually, and he was losing to the Communist Party. He was the first Russian president who used American consultants for his campaign.
Wow.
And so there's actually an amazing movie about that called Spinning Boris. Check it out. Yeah, like look it up on Amazon. Spinning Boris is Jeff Goldblum stars in this movie, and it's insanely funny and totally true. About the two American consultants that came and basically told him how to run a campaign, right? And they were like, you have to smile on camera. And he was like, the Russians don't smile. Why should I smile? You know, they made him like, so you would see all these billboards with, for the first time in Russian history, probably, of a smiling presidential candidate, stuff like that. So I'm assuming, because I never met him, that they were the ones who goes like, you need to do a rock the vote thing, right? So they employed the exact same strategy, rock the vote. They, recruited a bunch of us young artists and, the pulse of the generation. And of course, they're trying to recruit a generation. What better thing to use than a song called Our Generation that is on top of the charts in that moment, right? So that's essentially how it came about. And, we campaigned on television, we did music tours, played stadium, sports arenas, things like that, with a bunch of other artists. I was not the only one, but because of my song, it sort of made it into the focal point, right, of this campaign. And they say that it gave him, I think, 6 points, put him over the top. I mean, we might have actually collectively, the musical group, the group of young musicians, we might have helped him actually win and defeat the communists, which was the last time the communists had a chance to win in Russia ever. They never came close.
That is so historical. And I mean, when you talk about alignment and things lining up, I don't think I've heard, that many stories where it's just like the time and the place and all the stars align.
Yes.
And I mean, that's just an incredible story. And as you're talking about all this music, I'm looking at all of your awards that are topping your bookcase back there. So what are those awards all for back there? They look pretty impressive.
Well, most of them actually are post music. Like I had a bunch of them during my music years, but these are all from my, I have a marketing company. So all of these are websites, videos, things like that. So,
well,
yeah.
I have to ask you because I heard, I think Ritchie might have told me this, that this is more on like, not the entertainment side, but that your girls, you have 3 daughters, right?
Yeah.
And that they're dancers, they're competitive dancers, right?
Yes.
Now, are they ballerinas or do they do kind of everything with the competition dance?
They all 3 danced. And all of them went into these, conventions and competitions and won. They have their own awards and stuff like that. Yeah. But only one of them is now in college majoring in dance. The youngest, Bella. Yeah.
Okay, because I have 2 girls that are 17 and 12, and we've been on this competition dance thing it's my senior's 8th year. And so I know when I meet people who have been in that world, it's, it's super exciting, but I don't know if she'll want to dance in college, but I just thought, what a cool thing that you have daughters that, went through that whole process too.
Yeah. I was that dad, that lone dad in a convention center, like twice a year or something like that, where I would just come with.
Yeah, there's not a bunch of dads. There's, they pop in and out, but
it's usually moms. It's usually moms. Yeah. And there's a reason for it. It's like estrogen overload. Seriously, it is completely overwhelming as an experience. Like it's just girls, waves of girls. It's an ocean of girls that are giggling
and music all day, all night. Yeah.
Yes, all day, all night.
How to do the hair and stuff like that for them.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I would just escape and hide somewhere.
You've taken us to an escape, and we have 5 minutes coming up on the interview, and I want to make sure that we get all the juicy tidbits about you and it's interesting. In 2004, you changed. You went from being an international pop star to being married, to owning your own businesses. As you said, you pointed out winning awards and residing in Texas. You were also part of Hope Worldwide. So a huge philanthropist. So tell me, what was the switch for you personally that made you put down the mic or maybe use the mic in a different way in your message?
Well, my main thing, actually, surprisingly, was I got bored with music. And I think most artists will kill me for that, right? Like, seriously, like you of like 100,000 get a shot, you know, and you get there and you get bored. But I was actually genuinely bored. I wanted to do more things, and I think I got a part of it was my spiritual life. I became a Christian. I started pastoring as well. But it was not only that, it was that plus I want to do more things. I grew up all over the world. I speak 4 languages. I have a master's degree in economics, and all I do is, you know, hotel, airplane, stage, hotel, airplane, stage, bus, hotel, airplane, studio, stage, TV station, radio station, interview. That was it. Believe it or not, for some of us, it gets boring, and it was for me. So I just wanted to do entrepreneurship. I wanted to do charity work because I grew up all over the world. This sort of that switch went on. So I have a charity called the Send Mission Fund, and we have an after-school academy in Mozambique. We are helping refugees in Ukraine. We raised over $250,000 in just the first 2 months of the Ukraine war. So we're very active in the Ukraine. We just came back from Ukraine. Deb and I went there on a trip.
Well, now that's it. You said, Deb. Now it's my turn to embarrass you because I like to do that.
Well, we've got 2 more minutes, Richard. So
yes, but we're gonna for our listening audience. This is also in on podcast, and you do this to yourself, Christian Ray, because you post these pictures. So I'm assuming it's okay, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I'm a public person. I've made my peace with it a long time ago.
So one of the things that I can't help but to think about when I think about you, obviously we know that you are an international pop star. I don't know if you guys can see this here.
Yes.
You guys able to see that? But from what I understand, you posted these pictures here, and here you are with your wife Deb, and she also worked in the music industry. But here she is with Kiss and with Snoop Dogg. Yeah, it makes me wonder who.
That's my girl.
It makes me wonder, really, what are the conversations like at home? You've got these two, well-connected international people, they're just movers and shakers. What is it like?
Well, I think honestly, one of the things that was very attractive to me initially with Deb was that she didn't care how famous I was because she worked with way more famous people than I was. And to me, that was a big deal. As an artist, one of the downsides of being a public figure is that you become objectified, right? And you can't escape it. It's not good or bad. It just is, right? Like you're identified with a persona. And of course, you're trying to find someone to love and to get married and spend a lifetime with. You want her to marry me, not the persona. And she had that sort of that advantage that she didn't care, like she was American, I was Russian. She didn't know anything about my music, my backstory, anything. And on top of that, she was in the industry and she has worked with people that were way, way more famous than I was. She would hang out with Eric Clapton and, it's crazy the stories she has, right? But the cool thing is that it ended up being a really cool mom and pop family business eventually because we landed in Los Angeles. And what we did is we started a business called Hollywood World, which was creating music videos and albums and music for Eastern European artists, but with award-winning producers in Hollywood. So we ended up having our passions and our past sort of expertise unite in a business that lasted for quite a few years. And we worked with case in point, Kiss. Like I recorded an album for a rock band with Kurt Como. He's the producer of Kiss, in the studio of Kiss. The lead guitar player did a solo. I hired him to do those things. Some of the directors that we used were just everything from Britney Spears to Mick Jagger type people, right? I ended up being super good friends with a personal icon and hero of mine from the times where I grew up listening to jazz, and his name was George Duke. And he's just a legend, right? And he ended up being friends with George Duke. I mean, who knew? I remember I was driving with Deb, and we did a video together, and I interviewed him. If you look it up, Christian Ray Flores and George Duke, you'll find it. I remember the first time he called me. I was driving Deb, and we're together in the car, and I hear on the phone, and it's his name. It's George Duke. I'm like, Deb, George Duke. is calling me. You know, it was just such a moment, right?
Wow.
And we became super great friends, and I learned so much from him. And, you know, he passed, unfortunately, after we moved to Austin.
Well, we learned so much from you, and I'm sorry that the half hour is coming up to such a crunch, but I do want to give you the final word of where we can go on social media to follow you, Christian, because you have done extraordinary things, which only means you have to come back on the show.
Absolutely. We'll be happy to.
Love to have you. So which are some, I know Facebook, of course, but some other platforms, of course, we want to have you have the final say of where our audience viewing and listening can follow with you.
I think the best place, there's all kinds of places because I have several businesses and, you know, philanthropy work. Just go to christianrayflores.com, and it's basically my newsletter, my Substack newsletter. And you'll just, you can subscribe to it and get all the latest things. And, you know, I just started a coaching business precisely for people like myself, you know, like highly successful people who are severely unhappy, which this was me. And I've really developed a passion to coach high achievers to bridge that gap between high success and low happiness. So I just started that as a new thing because I get restless every once in a while. But you can learn all about it on christianrayflores.com, and you'll see sort of all the dimensions of the stuff that I'm interested in.
Christian Ray Flores, it has been an honor to finally meet you, and I am so impressed with you. I'm going to be following you, and of course we're going to post this up on Gail Scott-Key's Entertainment Now. And we want to thank you for taking the time for joining us this half hour, and make sure that you also tune in to Kristina. Where can they listen to the show?
Well, we are on all the major platforms: Amazon, iTunes, Google, Listen Notes, Player FM, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, and Audible.
You heard the beautiful woman. That's Kristina Millsaps, my co-host, along with Ritchie Munguia and Christian Ray Flores. It has been an honor. We thank you so much. We can't wait for your return on the show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, Christian.